Welcome to Marketing Demystified, the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with practical tips to boost your marketing efforts? You are in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jen Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Now, every SaaS company eventually ends up with a segment of users who signed up, completed onboarding, and then stopped logging in. Oftentimes, the instinct is to treat them like a cold audience, remind them you exist, and hope for the best. But these users already know your product. They chose it. So when they go quiet, it's really because they forgot you existed, and that changes everything about how you re-engage them. My guest today, Sumeeta Kumar, spent years in growth product marketing at Atlassian, Hulu, and Twitter, figuring out what it takes to re-engage dormant users. Today, we're walking through what re-engagement looks like when your brand isn't the barrier, how to build empathy with lapsed users, and the unexpected habit Sumeeta says has made her a sharper marketer across the board. Welcome to the show, Sumeeta.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I feel like this is such an important topic and one that we don't really talk about a lot. Marketers are often very focused on bringing on new logos and building that top of funnel. And so that customer marketing piece is so critical and maybe often deprioritized. So I'm really excited to talk about it today and hear about your experience.
Yeah, I hope to provide value. I totally agree. I think the idea of reactivating lapsed users is a little bit less sexy than some of the more splashy marketing work, but it's really important and can often be some of the lower hanging fruit in terms of getting engaged customers. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and to share my knowledge.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. You've worked on product marketing growth at companies like Twitter, Atlassian, and Hulu, as we mentioned. There's millions of people interacting with those products. How do you even define a dormant user to begin with, and maybe like segment them out? What are some of the methods that you use for that?
Yeah, so I don't think there's actually an industry benchmark on how to define a dormant user. For every company that I've worked at, the metrics we used were different, and they also shifted from time to time depending on the company priorities at any given moment. And so I don't think there's a universal definition for a dormant user. I think what it really depends on is how you'd ideally like people to use your product. So, for example, at a company like Twitter, people might log in multiple times a day. And so someone who hasn't logged in for a month might be considered dormant. At Hulu, someone might watch every weekend, or they'll binge a show and then disappear for a while. So you'd factor in viewing patterns and subscription behavior. Sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going.
No, I was just thinking, like, if I know those are a little bit larger companies, but I can also give examples that might be relevant for smaller companies. I think, or for any company really, rather than just picking an arbitrary metric, I think one way you can define what qualifies as dormant for your specific company is, when does the probability of someone coming back on their own start to drop? And that's usually where you want to begin proactively intervening.
Oh, that's really interesting. So we're thinking about, like, to your point, like somebody comes back every weekend to watch a show on Hulu. You don't want to be pinging them on a Wednesday because they haven't come back in 3 days. Whereas on Twitter, that frequency might be a little bit higher, or the ideal metric. So there's a lot of like data analysis that has to happen in terms of understanding that pattern of I guess your ideal user, right? Not just any user, but I'm sure there's a little bit of, I guess, there's a question for you. Is there a little bit of identifying ideal users and kind of customer segments, and prioritizing the metrics towards the ones that have that behavior that you want to replicate? Or is it really just kind of like across the board in your experience?
I think, yeah, you can learn a lot from starting with your healthy users and seeing their usage behavior. Obviously, there's going to be a segment that's hopefully, not obviously, there's going to be a segment that's your power users. And so you also don't want to veer too much in that direction in terms of setting what you define as healthy. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And then based on that, if people aren't hitting that baseline benchmark, then that's when you start to categorize them as dormant or at risk of going dormant.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point to bring out, of the difference between a healthy user and a power user. Because if your baseline metrics or your baseline goals are around making everybody a power user, you're going to be missing the mark pretty often, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't want to set yourself up for failure, but yeah, just realistic behavior. So again, using the Hulu example, as a user of any streaming platform, I think we know we kind of ebb and flow based on our availability and where we're at. And so once you sort of analyze the viewing behavior, then you can figure out who's veering off of that baseline of norm.
And so you talked a little bit about, the difference between like maybe a bigger company or how smaller companies can replicate that same approach. But I'm also curious, looking at Twitter, Hulu, Atlassian, like is there a difference with B2C companies versus B2B usage? Or is it really just that same kind of approach to identifying that inactivity that is like similar across the board?
I actually think it's pretty similar across the board. I think, again, it's just like figuring out what's normal for your product, and then understanding when it's starting to look like somebody's not going to come back by themselves, and that you need to proactively get involved to help them see the value, to remind them that you exist, etc.
Amazing. So I want to talk about disengagement. What are some of the most common reasons that you've seen that users are actually going quiet, and how can teams find out what those reasons are, rather than like making assumptions that they forgot or they got busy, or that, there's a bunch of assumptions we can make about why people might leave or disengage. But what are some of the most common reasons you've seen?
Yeah, I think from my experience, the reasons people go dormant usually boil down to three things. The first is product value. So people just don't understand how to use your product, or what to use your product for, or how it can make their lives or their work better. So they signed up, but they never quite reached that aha moment. That was like a problem that we saw at Twitter. Like, everybody in the world has at some point created a Twitter account, but they didn't necessarily understand how it was different from all the other social media platforms, or what to actually use it for if they didn't feel like they had, if they weren't like a thought leader or somebody that needed to spread the word. So product value and not getting that. Another is competition. So people are switching to your competitors, maybe because they have a better product or better pricing. And then lastly is just, it's not personal. It's something in their circumstances changed. Maybe they got what they needed, or their priorities shifted, and your product just isn't relevant to the work that they're doing anymore. I think if you're trying to figure out why users go dormant, there's sort of a lot of different ways, but I really encourage people not to guess, and would combine looking at behavioral data with doing proactive user research to really uncover for your particular company why people are going dormant.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious what your thoughts are on like, the concept of like not reaching that aha moment is really interesting to me. So like how closely aligned is that sort of long-term engagement with that initial onboarding experience? Because if somebody does, not understand exactly how to use the product or, doesn't get to that ideal moment where that's, if they get to this, then we know they're going to be retained for a certain period of time. How important is it to focus on the onboarding process first versus, the re-engagement piece after they've gone?
I think it's very important. However, I think it's a delicate balance because a lot of times, as I'm sure you've experienced when you sign up for a new product, the onboarding process can be overwhelming and you feel like you're getting a million things thrown at you at once. And so I think it's a delicate dance of walking people gently through all the different things they can use your product for, but at the right time and not bombarding them with all of the messaging when they're going through that initial sign up flow. And if you can figure out, like when somebody logs in and is like trying to figure out how to do something, like maybe that's the moment when you want to walk them through an in-product tutorial that showcases how to do that and how to do it in a way that gives them that aha moment, as opposed to like throwing it all into that welcome email.
Totally. I've seen some companies do this really well where they kind of like walk you through over a period of time. I think, Asana is one that, the initial kind of like free trial period, they kind of give you a little bit at a time and they give you some of those pro features that you would want to pay for. And then they take them away from you at the end of the trial. But they do a really good job at like educating you in the right kind of bite-sized amount at the beginning to kind of get you more engaged. There's a lot of other examples of companies that I've seen do it really well, but you're right. If you give me everything, all the possibilities and all the features and functionality, like hoping I'm going to find the one thing I need, I'm not going to see any of it.
Get scared and run away and be like, this is too much. I can't handle this. Yeah.
Especially with the like software type things that can be very complex or have a lot of capabilities that can be overwhelming in the beginning. So
yeah. And I also think that aha moment, like don't underestimate your current users who love you as like a vehicle to help new users recognize that aha moment. Because I think, right, and rightly so, a lot of times people are skeptical of marketing from the company themselves. And so hearing it from people that weren't paid or incentivized in any way, just why they love your product and what they use it for and what their like aha moment was, sharing that genuinely, authentically can help other people gain trust in your product and want to try for themselves as well.
Yeah. That's a great point as well. Those like reviews and those case studies can be really powerful.
Yeah, or even just Reddit, people talking about it on Reddit, authentically having their discussion about why they use your product and why they love it and why they chose it over competitor products.
Yeah, for sure. So another question for you. You've talked about empathy being a key part of customer re-engagement strategy. What does empathy actually look like in practice in product marketing, and how does it change the way that you approach inactive users?
Yeah, so the way I define empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And it's about asking, what might this person be experiencing, instead of just focusing on your own initiatives or your own goals. And so I actually think in the age of AI, empathy is becoming even more important than ever before, because Of course, AI can help us work faster and better, but it can't replace the work of understanding why a customer disengaged in the first place. And that's still the job for us marketers to figure out. So specifically around reactivation, I think empathy changes how you treat dormant users, because instead of treating them as all the same, you start to recognize that different people became inactive for different reasons and that they deserve different experiences.
That's so true. And also sounds like a little, like in this moment, I'm like overwhelmed by that. I'm like, oh, how do you like segment? How do you understand these different groups and why they disengaged, and then give them a unique, or it's not even unique, a more relevant experience? I think personalization in marketing is so critical. It's so critical to not say to someone, hey, you forgot about us, when they haven't forgotten. There's a totally different reason. But what do you say to that sort of like overwhelm of like, oh gosh, that feels complicated and scary to implement?
Yeah, I can break it down like just how I've done it historically. Okay, so if I was first trying to figure out why users went dormant, I would sort of start with the behavioral data. So I'd look at things like, where are people consistently dropping off? Like that could potentially highlight a friction point that needs to be addressed. I'd look to see, are there any key differences between what healthy users are doing versus dormant users are doing with your product? So I'll give you an example. When I was at Twitter, we found that if a user tweeted, like actually sent out a tweet, then they were way more likely to retain, which makes sense, right? Like if you're just lurking versus if you're actively engaging on the platform. And so once we uncovered that, we were able to focus on educating dormant users on how to tweet for themselves, and encourage, like land them into custom designed experiences, and then encourage them to do their first tweet, or other proven retentive behaviors. And then another thing in behavioral data that I would look at is what patterns occur before a user goes dormant. So look for the top indicators like declining login frequency or lower engagement. Those types of signals can help you identify users who are at risk of churning and help you get ahead of it before they actually leave. And then the other part, not beyond just looking at the data, that I'd say I personally think is even more important, is to go out and do actual user research. You can do surveys, focus groups, customer interviews. And honestly, even if you're working with a limited budget, there are so many ways that you can talk directly to your customers to figure out why they're leaving. You can use social media. You can see what people are saying on Reddit. You can hop on a few 20-minute phone calls. I think like even five conversations can reveal patterns that you never would have been able to see just from the analytics alone. And then once you know why they're going dormant, you can tailor and personalize your strategy to fix it. So if somebody never really understood the value of the product, you can hit them with education. If somebody's leaving because of a product issue, you can address and fix that product issue before you send them an email to try to reactivate them, so that you can show them that you're like listening, you're taking their feedback into account, you care, and you're making those changes. Yeah, I think that's how you can personalize it, is just get out there, talk to people, look at the data, and then create custom experiences for them. And honestly, sometimes it means also just recognizing that your product genuinely isn't the right fit for them and being honest and transparent about that. And that's okay too.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you could spend a lot of resources trying to re-engage non-ideal fit users that were never really meant to be there to begin with, which is hard. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around that sometimes, especially I would imagine with larger companies like Twitter or Hulu, like, well, everybody's a good fit for our offering, but
can't be all things to all people, unfortunately.
that's right. Just we would like to be. But yeah, I love the blend of quantitative data and qualitative conversations, and it lends itself really well to that empathy piece that you were talking about. Like, you can't have empathy for your users if you've never spoken to them. And some of the companies that I think have done the best job with their offerings and their marketing and their, all of the things are very customer centric, and they have people in all different divisions talking to customers, talking to users on an ongoing basis for that, that continuous discovery kind of approach, which I think is really important to understand what do people like about your product, what are they struggling with, and also just more generally, like, what problem are they trying to solve, regardless of your product and what they've signed up for? What alternatives did they consider in before signing up, or are they using other competing platforms as well? I mean, Hulu's a great example of that. I've got every streaming service that there is, and when I find one I don't have, I'm guaranteed to sign up for a free trial to watch that one thing I need to watch, and then probably will drop something else off. So, I just can only imagine how to navigate this in that environment where the competition is, you're competing against me, first of all, going outside and doing something not in front of a screen. And then when I am taking a little bit of time on a screen, 12 other streaming platforms. So yeah, I think just that, going back to that customer centricity and understanding what are the occasions that I'm going to use that product? What are the alternatives that I have in front of me? And why would I choose Hulu over another in a given moment that's the information you need in order to re-engage them.
Yeah. I also think, like, as a customer, knowing that a company is accessible, that they're listening to me, like, that deepens my loyalty, especially now. I don't know about you, but like, it's like impossible to get a human being on the phone, or so many companies, like their customer service is just through AI chat or like email, and you can't actually, like, you're like, is anybody from the company actually even listening, And so I think now, especially in that place where everything has become so depersonalized, if you're a company that makes it a point to let your customers know, or even potential customers, that you're there, you're listening to everything that they're saying, you're responding so that they feel seen and heard, that alone makes me want to, as a customer myself, like, choose one company where I know if anything goes wrong, I can like reach out, I can get support, versus another company where I know I can, it's gonna be a nightmare to try to get support or help from an actual human being. So
that's so true.
It's a strategic advantage, in my opinion, in today's day and age.
Yeah, to have a human conversation. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when, once you've identified a segment of inactive users, when they're trying to bring them back, and then on the flip side, what approaches have you found that are effective?
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake that a company can make when trying to bring back a lapsed user is to drop them into the exact same experience that they left in the first place. A good analogy is like getting back together with an ex and then realizing that nothing has changed, and you ended up running into all the same issues that made you leave the first time, If someone left because they didn't understand your product, do not just send them back. Like, just send them an email where they click through and land back in the middle of the sea of your product with no help, no navigation. If they left because a feature was missing, don't just tell them to come back and pretend like there was no problem or no like shortcoming on your side. Like, own it, fix it. hopefully, and then give them a reason to believe that this time will be different. And so in terms of like what approaches I found that are effective, I think we touched on this earlier, but I think the most effective reactivation approaches are personalized. You start by truly acknowledging why that person or that segment churned, and then you carry that context through their entire reactivation journey. So from the initial touch point of messaging that they receive to the landing page or landing experience that you drop them into, and then all the way through to the in-product experience that they get from there. So it's like very customized, very specific to their reasons for churn. And the goal is to make them feel like, okay, like I get it now, or like, okay, they get me now, you know, like it makes sense now. Now this is different.
I love that. Don't drop them back into the same experience that they left before. It sounds very simple when you say it, but it's maybe not so obvious. But I love that. Just like making them feel like they understand you, or that you understand them, and their challenges. And that's where that personalization piece is so critical. Just curious on like a very specific tactical level, like what channels are you going after? And it's probably different business by business, but is this primarily like an email effort? Is there a retargeting piece in place as well? Like what are some of the channels that are most effective for re-engagement?
I found email to be very, there's a lot of ability for personalization there, and it's less intrusive than, like, for example, push notifications. I think there's nothing worse than getting push notifications from a product that you're disengaged from and annoyed by. And so you want to be able to sort of like captivate people without annoying them. So yeah, I think email, also in product can be effective depending on your product. But I guess like you have to get them there first. And so my top pick would be email, sometimes text, but again, I think that can be intrusive. So how can you reach people? How can you personalize it without annoying them?
Yeah. Those are good tips. Those kind of in-app experiences can probably go a long way once you do get them back in.
Yeah.
But yeah, they need to be in there.
Yeah. And that's what I was touching on earlier, like the through line, it shouldn't just be like, okay, maybe you send an amazing email that's like, we've changed, we heard you, we fixed this and it's all great now. And then they click on it and they're dropped again back in the middle of your homepage to try to figure out how to navigate to that thing on their own and see how it's shifted. Like instead, even if you have to like build out a custom landing experience, which I've worked with product teams to do that in the past, like take them exactly to where you want them to see so that they can have that realization and then give you another chance.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious about now, even prior to re-engagement, but just retention in general. And you've worked across social media and streaming, B2B software, and looking back on those experiences, what lessons have you learned about customer retention that have stayed true kind of no matter the product or business model?
Yeah, I think this is like what we touched on earlier. You can't be all things to all people. And so I have this like belief in both life and in work, which is go where the love is. And there's so much that you can learn from the people who already use and love your product. And so across all of the varied roles that I've had, a few lessons have held true. The first is that the best retention signal is your most engaged users that love you. Not just what they do, but how they got to that place of loving you. And those users who stick around are the ones that see your product value and they formed a habit around it. So if you can understand their path to getting there, then you can replicate it for more new users. second for customer retention is about reducing friction. You would be surprised, but in my experience, a lot of churn comes from really simple fixes, like really simple moments of confusion or unnecessary effort on the user's behalf. Things like just like not being able to remember their password and then getting frustrated and giving up after a few tries. And so figuring out like easy fixes, like email them a password reset really fast, or a code or something like that, which I've seen companies do now, but you'd be shocked how many, I've seen that at multiple companies, and it's such an easy fix. So figure out those points and smooth those edges. That is really important for customer retention. And then lastly, for retention, it's about clear value. So users might join because you had a really splashy campaign or like an excellent price, but they stay because they understand how your product makes their lives easier or better. And so help them figure that out. Don't just leave it to them to figure that out on their own, either through product education or then having your current power users share their knowledge and wisdom with them. So for me, that saying "go where the love is" means, figure out who are your most successful users, understand what made them successful, and then design everything else around getting more people to that same place faster.
I love that. Go where the love is. You said that's your motto in life too. I think it's a good one. That's great. I'm thinking about, like, as you were talking about helping people experience value in the platform, I was thinking about there's a lot of ways, especially for new products, and this is more on the B2B side than B2C, but there are these sort of community-led launch opportunities, whether it's Product Hunt or, AppSumo, which is kind of like a rev share, and a lot of these like similar ones to that. It's offering kind of a community experience for a lower cost or some kind of exclusive access to try out a new platform. And I see these experiences fall really flat when the reason people got in there to begin with was just that they got a discount or just that they were part of this community, and they fall off. The retention is so low because there's not enough focus on driving value once they're in there. And maybe it's not even, it's like what you were talking about with the personalization and kind of segmenting your database, but really understanding, hey, these aren't like users that have come to you and discovered your value on their own. You're having to show it to them. And that mindset of making sure you're showing everyone value based on how they got to you or what they came to you for. I've seen a lot of those experiences actually of like when in the sign up flow, it might say like, what are you most interested in doing here? What is your goal? How did you, what problem are you trying to solve with us? And that helps to tailor the experience to make sure I get the value that I need versus just giving everyone kind of this blanket experience. So it really resonates with me how you're driving value once people get in. The other thing that you said too, which I think is really powerful, I did an episode, it's got to be like 3 years ago. I don't even recall who I was talking to, but it stuck with me. We were talking about customer journey mapping, and this person, it's going to like make me crazy that I can't remember who it was, but talked about journey mapping the friction points in your product experience, and what you were talking about of like people forgetting their passwords or whatever. And a lot of times we journey map the ideal flow and the ideal experience, but marrying that in parallel with the friction points and kind of figuring out how do people get to a place where they fall off, and then fixing that. The easy fixes that you can put in place is so overlooked oftentimes and so easy, but just something that's really easy to forget. So I really appreciate that reminder. It brought me right back to that customer journey map of the friction points.
Yeah, I think a lot of times companies can think like, oh, building bigger, better products is the solve for it, but actually like fix your house first before, you know what I mean? Like fix the piping and the electricity and those different pieces before you add the extension onto your house.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pivot a little bit, but not hugely. I know you're very passionate about travel, and this is a little side hustle for you in some ways. Word. But you've even said that travel makes you a better marketer. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's the connection for you?
Yeah, I'm just seeing like there's all my lonely planets and my 1,000 places to see before you die guides and my national parks. I've got them all there. Yeah. I actually recently got my 50th passport stamp, which was super exciting. And I have a little side blog about travel, specifically solo female travel, because I love it so much. And I really want to encourage other women and just people to get out there and explore this incredible world that we live in. But I think that the way that travel has made me a better marketer is because it's made me more curious. Every time I visit a new country, I'm reminded that the way that I see the world and the way that I live and think isn't the only way to do it, and that people have completely different values, different traditions, motivations, and ways of communicating. And so I think in marketing, the biggest mistake we can make as marketers is assume that our customers think like we do. And so travel has taught me to replace my assumptions with curiosity, to observe, to ask questions, and to try to understand somebody else's perspective before I try to influence their behavior. So yeah, I think this goes back to the concept of empathy. I think travel has helped me personally to increase my empathy for all types of other people and understand them better. And I think the better that you understand people, the better marketer you'll become.
I love that so much. There is so much perspective that you can gain outside of your own backyard. And also some incredible experiences. It's like not purely unselfish, right? It's not just for the benefit of that perspective, but yeah, I think that it's really important to, I've heard a lot of conversations in boardrooms or amongst leadership teams of like, well, I would do this, or I would experience it this way. And that sample size of one is only takes you so far. It's not bad to have thoughts and opinions and experiences and to share that, but pairing that with an understanding that I'm not the only person in the planet and the only person that might use the product or whatever. So
there's a whole big world out there of people who think and feel differently than you do. I'll give you an example. I recently got back from East Africa, and here in Austin, Texas, where I live, or anywhere in the US, I think probably if you open LinkedIn or Twitter or anything, the conversation is just all AI everywhere. And it's all about how to use it or the latest updates or the latest releases or whatever. In Africa, nobody that I talked to used AI. They were scared of it. This is other tourists and the locals as well. So it was also Western tourists that fell into this category. But people were like, oh, I don't trust it, or it's scary, or I never use that. And it was actually really eye-opening for me to realize that outside of this bubble that I live in, there's a bunch of people that haven't even begun their journey with AI or that maybe never will. And so that was a good reminder, and it provided a lot of perspective that my reality is not the same as everyone else's.
For sure. I know it's easy to be in kind of an echo chamber sometimes, and it's LinkedIn, it's the people that we work with day to day, and you make assumptions on, well, everybody is at this kind of same level when it comes to AI or marketing or business or whatever, and you insert yourself into other circles and, whether that's travel or even in your community in different ways. it's very eye-opening to realize that, hey, we're not all following the same path here, and everyone has different kind of strengths and different focuses. And I think it's actually really encouraging when I have conversations with people who, if I'm in my day-to-day with my clients or my team or my network, and we're talking about marketing concepts, and we just assume everybody has done this, that, and the other on the, foundational level. And then you have conversations with people outside of your typical, maybe career life. And some of the concepts, very basic, very, foundational, are new to them because they have other strengths. And so I think it's really fun to kind of discover that and have your eyes open to that. And I love that travel is doing that for you. Yeah. I hope everybody checks out Sumeeta's blog, travel blog. But aside from that, with all of the conversation around retention and re-engagement, I just want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise with us. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did too. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Please make sure you are following Sumeeta on LinkedIn. Check out her blog at sumeetaseeks.com, where she talks about travel and self-discovery. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Marketing Demystified wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for more conversation.